Who remembers their first step? Or better yet, who remembers the moment they were born into this world? If you did, what would you tell yourself right now about that moment? Would you tell yourself to rush through life as if there were no breaks, there was no time to sit and experience the sound, the smell, the taste of living for the first time? 10 years ago, I strapped on an 80-pound pack, clicked into my skis, and proceeded to ski 20 miles into the backcountry of Montana. I had skied over 2 mountain passes, and I was with 5 of my best friends. The whole priority of this trip was to be 25-year-old males acting like 12-year-olds. See, at this point in time, I had established my career in civil engineering. I was climbing the company ladder to success. And in the eyes of society, life looked perfect. I was on the course that everyone would want me to be on. Little did I know, hours later, I would find myself crumpled in a bloody heap at the base of a mountain, having just been struck by an avalanche that would kill my best friend and leave my leg hanging on by a thread of flesh. I remember in that moment looking down at my leg, seeing my toes facing backwards and 4 inches of bone sticking through my ski pants, and realizing that life was over. The logical look said that there is no way I can rebound from this. The fact that I was in the backcountry 20 miles and no one expected me home for 4 days. The fact that I had no radio contact with the outside world, let alone the stream of blood that was on the snow. And so my eyes became heavy. And as my eyelids fell, I found myself accepting the fate of life being over. It was a logical decision. But there was this moment that I held on to, and that moment said, what can you do? And all I could come up with is that I could keep my eyes open. And so as I pried my eyelids back open, it was this sudden download of every experience I had had in 25 years that shocked me. But these experiences weren't simply images. They were smells. They were the touch of my wife, her embrace when I'd come home from work. It was the feel of a cold morning in the mountains when I would walk out and feel that crisp mountain air. It was the sound of crickets in the summer singing late into the night. It was intoxicating. I was alive. In that moment, as I opened my eyes, I was living life in a way that I never had up until that moment. What was really striking was how content I was. And I know you think this man's dying, he's losing all his blood, he's running through a catalog of memories in his mind. His contentment is simply the reliving of his last experiences. But it was different than that. My contentment wasn't that of a dying man. My contentment was of a 25-year-old who was born again. Right now, millions of individuals are staring on the internet, scouring it to find that wow moment, the tipping point. In fact, in this audience, many of you have come here in hopes of being inspired to become innovative and or define and find your tipping point. We live in a world that is connected technologically in a way that it never has been before, and it's changing on a daily basis. We have access to data, experiences, opinions, and observations that once would have taken us centuries to obtain. But most importantly, our body generally relies on 5 key senses, senses that we utilized to survive only decades ago. And yet now, we've boiled our word down in large part to a visual world that lacks smell, that lacks taste, that lacks a feeling or a touch. And so we find ourselves shaping our perspective on life and what it is to be living, not so much through our own experiences, but our daily logging online, our flash through Facebook or Twitter or whatever it is your favorite social media site is. We are experiencing life in 30-second clips. They say seeing is believing. But what are we believing? If we were to look at a child, the child is a great starting point because I believe they are the freest thinking we will ever be. They have no context. They're making their perception of the world as they breathe their first breaths. But it's also an equalizing point, right? We are all born into this world in a very similar way. We're born into this world kicking and screaming, and then proceeding to shove cake in our mouth because we like it. Or we look at dirt and we don't see it as soil or something that's going to raise a garden. We may see it as clothing. We may see it as something to make us look better. I can tell you my son certainly tasted it as if it was food, and on more than one occasion. Children at times have no patience at all, and yet at other times they can sit in the middle of a cold and snowy backyard and wait for that single snowflake to strike their tongue as if it will be the finest treat they'd ever tasted. Imagine my son staring at a hose of fresh water and simply wondering, where did it come from? Did any of you consume your lunch or dinner in the same fashion? Have you looked at your future in the same way? I laid in a tent for 48 hours, and in that period of time, I realized that life, as I was living it, was based on a very handicapped view. I realized that I wasn't collecting my senses and experiencing them in the context of those observations, but instead I was perceiving life based off of the world's perception of me. If you were to look at my Facebook posts, they would have read something along the lines of, do I look cool? Do I fit pop culture? I was not experiencing self-discovery or free thinking. I was experiencing the consumption of ideas. My free thinking aspect to life was no different than a mechanic picking up a repair manual and reading his way on how to fix an engine. When I reached the hospital, I remember being full of life. I was excited for what lay ahead. My perceptions were almost wiped clean because I was experiencing life. Now, for the last 8 to 10 minutes, you've been experiencing me for the very first time. You've begun to build a perception of who I am, what I can do. So this is the test. Does your perception change now? When we base life on simply what we see, we miss the power of living. In the same context that I ask you how you perceive me, years ago I would have said, how do I perceive you perceiving me? And I would have dictated or let my life be dictated by that. There are atrocities in the world. There are inequalities. But your actions do not have to reflect what the world is saying about you. When I had my leg amputated, I grabbed my wife's hand and I told a doctor to cut my leg off, not because I was going to go and live the life of someone who is handicapped and disabled. I was going to go and live the life that fulfilled me. I learned to ski again. This is where life got innovative. See, I had taken my senses. I'd taken the smells that empowered me. I took the taste that made me crave more. I felt the fabric and the texture of life, and it inspired me. It gave me passion. And with that passion, I took action. And that action caused me to see life in a different way and through different eyes and experience in a different context. And when I did that, I started to see solutions that my peers didn't see. I designed my own prosthetic leg so that I could become a telemark skier again, because after all, I had a dog named after the sport. And how do you have your favorite animal named after a sport when you can't do it? Little did I know that I would click into my bike, I would pedal away, and I'd find myself living the dream of racing on the world stage. A dream that I had turned my back on 2 years before losing my leg because I was convinced I was too heavy and my shoulders were too broad. But the reality is that on that day, my problem was I had both my legs. I would have never told you I would stand on a podium in front of the world in London in 2012 when I had both legs. That never was how I perceived the world. You all have an amazing gift that is just waiting to be found. The path and the trail that leads up to this very spot that I'm standing is not one you can duplicate, but that's because you have your own unique path to follow. You don't need to be told how to be innovative. You need to experience it. And when you do, we will collectively see a world that is bettered. We will make changes that not only innovate the world, but show compassion and grace at a level that we've never expected. I live today trying to show my children a broad and diverse world, but giving them the opportunity to explore and make it their own. I urge you tonight, seek out the sweetest of tastes. Listen to the winds blow and smell the ocean. And after you've contemplated it for a period of time, open your eyes and paint your masterpiece. Thank you.